Alright, what's going on, guys? It's Rio, and today we're going to be giving an overview on all the classes. This is not going to be a super in-depth overview, but I'm just going to be talking about each class, some, basic playstyle tips and whatnot, why they're good or bad in 3v3, and that good stuff. We may have a more advanced guide on classes, maybe even multiple, in the future of the series, but we're still in the early parts of the series, so I'm trying to give the more simpler videos and simpler tips. So let's do it. We're gonna be going worst to best. So I'll start with the worst class, which for 3v3 it's Buccaneer, and then we'll go up to the best class, and I'll just explain a little bit about every class. So Buccaneer, the worst class in 3v3. Why is that? So the meta in 3v3 is a bunch of musketeers, and a decent amount of them have Overwatch 3, right? So not only when you're running a Buccaneer can you get heavily outranged by a bunch of musketeer units, but also otters are meta, and you have stuff, and they can slow your movement down, and a big part of Buccaneer is your movement. They can reduce your damage, so if you double foot your Buccaneer, send him in, and then he just gets, pretty much crippled by a damage reduce, you're just wasting away at your precious forts. And the other thing is, stuff like Purge and boxing your opponent in, and I'll talk more about boxing opponent in later in the series, but, specifically Purge. If your opponents do a musket line, like I showed you, which is 2 squares in front of your pirates, and all the units are protected by Purge, if a Buccaneer charges any sort of unit, he's going to get purged and just die. So, overall, Buccaneer, the worst class for 3v3, but I do know that some people only have a max Buccaneer and they're trying to learn 3v3, or some people just really want to make Buccaneer work. It can almost definitely work in 3v3, but you're definitely going to get a lower success rate out of him, because a big part of Buccaneer is charging and getting in big loads of damage, which he can work, but he definitely struggles more than any other class. Alright, so next you have Swashbuckler, right? Swashbuckler, I'm going to consider the 4th worst class, right? But Swashbuckler versus Witch Doctor, a lot of it's based on playstyle. The first 2 classes are going to be undoubtedly the best 2. But Swashbuckler and Witch Doctor, whether which one's 3rd, which one's 4th place, it's kind of debatable. At least for my playstyle, I find Witch Doctor definitely better. But to be fair, I have more of a defensive playstyle. If you have more of a rushing, fast playstyle, Swashbuckler could work better for you. So what does Swashbuckler offer you? And, well, first let's just talk about the downside of Swashbuckler. 1, they're a melee class. So if you go for like a melee hit, like how Buccaneer oftentimes does, you can get purged and die. They can box you in. Just like some disadvantages of being a melee class in 3v3. Having a lot of musketeers means that you're going to have to... And the fact that Exeter is meta means you can get slowed. They can easily outrange you. And, if they have stuff like boxing you in with barricades or a bunch of units. But pros, you have all of these poisons. You have a bunch of poisons, right? As a Swashbuckler, abuse Gloom. Abuse the fact that there's a bunch of units on the board, and to essentially each unit, even without Naturally Spooky. I do have Naturally Spooky, so it's 215, but even without Naturally Spooky, it's 205 per tick. And that's like not having any high rolls. That's 1,000 damage per unit. So if you go up to a musket line and just poison 3 of them, that's 3,000 damage overall you're gonna get. So Swashbuckler poisons is something that people really do not think about. 3,000 damage, an assassin only does 800 damage plus 300 bleeding. So that's like, a 1,400 damage total. This, when you're hitting multiple units, is going to be doing like double, triple, even as much as an assassin does. Absolutely insane. Let me tell you something. I would only recommend playing Swashbuckler for the most part if you have the Group Curse staff. I would say if you do not have the Group Curse staff, you can definitely still run Swashbuckler, but this is a big reason why you want to run it, because it stops all the enemies from healing for 5 turns. And in Team PvP, we have a bunch of privateers getting group heals, and a lot of people have group heals on pets. Stopping heals is just insane. So this does it to the entire enemy team for a lot of turns. And then, your hides allow you to pressure them with one-shots. So if you hide and get into the backline and just pressure the privateer with an assassin, it can force them to waste forts. But really, a big drawback to having melee is how many autos there are, and how you can get slowed and have a hard time getting all your poisons off. The other thing is, if you're, in their backlines poisoning, and they slow you, and they maybe body block you with units, you can easily get killed. So just be very, very careful. Alright, next we have Witch Doctor right here. Witch Doctor, if you guys do not know, my main class setup is Privateer, Musketeer, Witch Doctor. I honestly think Witch Doctor is better than Swashbuckler. So yeah, let's go over what Witch Doctor offers. Now, you may hear a lot of people saying Witch Doctor is the worst class in the game, which it is, because most people play 1v1, and for 1v1, Witch Doctor kind of sucks. The reason why is because Witch Hunter, when people are in your face, will trigger half your spells, and oftentimes in 1v1, you don't really get like your Morn Songs, your Soul Reavers off. You do not get a lot of your hits off, I've noticed. And 1v1s, just because of how people will just zerg you if you're a Witch Doctor. They will obviously just push you. They will bum rush you, and just, you know, one-shot you with like a Goronado. You have like no dodge, you have, you know, but we're not gonna talk about 1v1. It is the worst class for 1v1, but for 3v3, the reason why it works out. So Witch Doctor is a really ranged-based class, and I call this like the combo-based class, right? We've talked about combos. It's all about going for one-shots, going for early game, infinite range damage. Witch Doctor is the combo class, because they have these Morn Songs, Mojo Burn, Soul Reaver, Ghost Whale, big guns, gunnery, right? They're all about getting long-range hits off. When you stack those with other damage, you get a lot of damage off. The issue is within 1v1, you're not able to have the time to actually do that and actually set up all your buffs and be able to get all your long-range combos off. But in 3v3, you can kind of charge up your Musketeer to buy you time and just have them bombing while you're slowly getting spells off in the back. And Witch Doctor, they're not really a support class in the way that they give like a bunch of heals and a bunch of forts like Privateers do, but it's more just the positioning that Witch Doctor has, kind of in the back, doing long range stuff while you're, you know, presumably your Musketeer is doing a lot of the frontline work. It allows you to, you know, your Musketeer buys you enough time to be able to get all the spells off. You can also just kind of stay in the backline and spam Mojo Storms. You know, I'd recommend if you're going to charge someone in, usually charging your musket, since Witch can be really squishy, but you can also charge your Witch, put a bunch of Mojo Storms on the first page, and just kind of outrange them. So great, high range class, goes great with Musketeers, because they're really range based, and yeah. One more very brief thing I did want to touch about, is that I not go over really in the video, is that Swashbuckler in late game, you got Assassin Strikes, you got Hides to be a little more elusive and, you know, not get hit, and what you can say forts, is a lot better than Witch Doctor in end game. Witch Doctor kind of lacks hits, because you can run out of a lot of your good hits in the early game and mid game. So Swashbuckler definitely is a better late game choice. So if you do have a good strategy and you can, you know, win the companion war with still having a Swashbuckler, your late game, your end game will be a lot easier, but I do still think Witch Doctor is just the slightest bit better, but it's honestly super preferential to your playstyle. Now we're on to Musketeer. Definitely a class that you're gonna see in a lot of 3v3s, okay? Like, I would say most good teams who are playing seriously, or even just most good teams, even if they're not playing seriously, most good teams who are, you know, playing to win, pretty much, you don't have to be tryharding, is gonna be having a Musketeer. Musketeer is amazing. Early game, they have combos with Ghost Whale, Sniper Shot, and most notably Chantal, which has 2 snipes. Alright, so if you're playing with a Witch Doctor, it can really help. But then mid-game, they have these huge damage bombs. They leave traps, 3x3 radius, 600 damage each. So if you hit 3 units, 1800 damage, right? If you hit a full clump of like 4 units, 2400, 5 units, 3000 damage, right? In a 3v3, with all the units that there are, and the fact that people are not going to spread all over the place, a lot of units can be grouped up, and you can get heavy loads of damage, okay? Musketeers is a great class, and they have range. They can counter other Musketeer units, which are oftentimes used, especially if you're like me and you run stuns some of the time. Actually, most of the time I run stuns. You can stun other Musketeer units. You have super high range. You have 1 less range than Witch Doctors, but still, unless the Witch Doctor is a 5 range weapon, or you for whatever reason have a 4 range weapon. Great class. You can bomb spam. You have trick shots, which are high damage, and also just your normal hits can do so much. You can just chain off of everything. In the late game, Musketeer is great, and in early game and mid game, it's just overall great class. Now, one thing I do want to mention: Buccaneer and Swashbuckler are amazing during late game because of all their melee hits, but early game they really struggle, and like mid game they can struggle as well. But Musketeer is a great all-around class. So overall, amazing class. You have Chantal, just an amazing unit. Overall, a great class. And then finally, we have the best class. It's Privateer. Okay, who would have guessed, right? I have my 1v1 set on. Ignore the assassins and brutal, all that, right? Privateer is the ultimate class. You have bombs, maybe a ghost whale, maybe a morn song, for early game. You have buffs, critical buffs that can affect everyone for early game. Discipline, calm the troops. Everything for early game. Group heals to stay alive from their privateer bomb spam, right? You have everything to survive the early game. Mid game, you have stuff like battle zeal and like great buffs. You can be giving heals, whatever other group heals you have. Stuff like a spirit, enduring, maybe a wind spirit, right? And just a bunch of force for mid game. And then late game, you probably have a couple of melee hits, and if you still have heals, you're going to be able to keep alive the other people. Overall, Privateer is the all-in-one class. Every single team in 3v3 has a Privateer. Every single team has a Privateer. You don't have to be a good team. You just have to be an okay team with like half a brain, and they'll have a Privateer, okay? Like literally every team runs a Privateer because it really is the necessary class. You need a support, right? Privateer has so many heals, so many forts, great early game abilities. You need a Privateer to support you, alright? In 2v2, I've seen people make no Privy work, but 3v3, you just need a Privy, alright? Ultimate class, you also can bring double otter on Privy since you come with an Emmet. Yeah, great. The ultimate support class, absolutely insane. And yeah, so that's a quick rundown of the classes. Just to list the order. Best is Privateer, second best is Musketeer, then Witch Doctor, then Swashbuckler, but they can be kind of debatable for interchangeable, and then finally Buccaneer, right? Those are the orders of the classes, right? So overall, just want to make this video. We're still in the earlier stages of this guide, and I'm still going over some more of the basic stuff. Try not to get too complex quite yet until I got all the basics off. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace.